Part 1. The brutal truth no one wants to hear. What if I told you that everything you've been taught about life, about happiness, success, and meaning, is a lie? That no matter how hard you try, how much you achieve, or how deeply you love, you will never truly be satisfied. Not because you're not good enough. Not because you're not trying hard enough, but because life itself is designed to be a cycle of suffering. This isn't some modern self-help gimmick. This isn't about thinking positive or manifesting success. This is the raw, brutal truth exposed by one of the darkest philosophers of all time, Arthur Schopenhauer, that he saw the world not as it should be, but as it truly is, cold, indifferent, and driven by forces outside of our control. And if you have the courage to understand his ideas, you will never see life the same way again. Because once you grasp the dark philosophy of Schopenhauer, you unlock something that most people will never have: freedom. Not the illusion of freedom that society sells you, not the kind of freedom that comes from money, power, or status, but the real freedom, the kind that comes from seeing the world exactly as it is and learning how to outsmart it. This is not a lesson for the weak. If you want comforting lies, stop reading now. But if you're ready for the truth, the kind that will shake you to your core, keep going, because in Part 2, I will show you why your suffering is not an accident, that it's the entire purpose of life itself. Are you ready for the truth? Part 2. Why life itself is designed to make you suffer. Most people believe that suffering is something that happens to them. They think that if they just work hard enough, if they just find the right person, if they just make the right choices, they can escape it. But what if I told you that suffering is not an accident? What if I told you that life itself is built to keep you in a state of endless desire, frustration, and dissatisfaction? No matter what you do, this is the core of Schopenhauer's dark philosophy. And once you understand it, you will see why happiness is an illusion that was never meant to last. The will, the invisible force that controls you. Schopenhauer believed that the universe is not rational. There is no grand design, no divine purpose, no ultimate meaning. Instead, everything is controlled by one thing: the will, not your personal desires, but a blind, endless force of craving and struggle that drives everything in existence. It makes animals hunt and kill. It makes people chase money, power, and love. It keeps you constantly wanting something more. Even when you already have enough, you don't control it. It controls you. And here's the worst part: the will never lets you be satisfied. Think about it. You crave something, you fight for it, you finally get it, and for a brief moment, you feel pleasure. But then you get bored. You start craving something else. This cycle never ends. No matter what you achieve, the will always finds a new way to make you restless, hungry, and unsatisfied. This is why people who have everything, wealth, success, fame, still feel empty inside. Because the will doesn't care about happiness. It only cares about keeping you chasing the two things that rule your life: pain and boredom. Schopenhauer said that human life is trapped between two extremes. 1. Pain, when you don't have what you want. 2. Boredom, when you finally get what you want and realize it wasn't enough. Think about this: when you're poor, all you can think about is making money. When you get rich, you realize that money doesn't fulfill you, so you start chasing something else. When you're single, you crave love and connection. When you get it, you start noticing problems, flaws, and imperfections, and your mind begins craving something new. Most people never see this cycle, so they spend their entire lives running, chasing, and suffering, believing that happiness is always just one step away. But it never comes, because the moment you escape pain, boredom takes its place. And that's the joke life plays on all of us. The illusion of happiness, and why it's a trap. Now, you might be thinking, if happiness is an illusion, then what's the point of life? And that's exactly the question Schopenhauer forces you to ask. Because the realization that happiness is a lie can do one of two things. It can break you, make you fall into despair, nihilism, and hopelessness. Or it can free you, allowing you to break out of the endless cycle of suffering. But how? How do you escape the trap that life has placed on you? In Part 3, I will show you Schopenhauer's radical answer: the only true way to beat the system and take back control of your own existence. Most people will never reach this level of understanding. But if you do, you will gain an advantage over 99% of the world. Are you ready for the next step? Part 3. How to escape the endless cycle of suffering. By now, you see the truth. Your desires control you. Happiness is always temporary. You are trapped in a cycle of craving, frustration, and boredom. And if you don't understand how to escape, you will suffer for the rest of your life, just like everyone else. But Schopenhauer found a way out, a way to break free from the invisible chains that keep most people enslaved to their desires, that it's not what you think, that it's not money, that it's not pleasure, that it's not success, love, or power, that it's something far more radical, that if you truly understand this next lesson, you will never look at life the same way again. Step 1. Kill the illusion of the perfect life. Most people live their lives chasing a dream that doesn't exist. They tell themselves, once I have more money, I'll finally be happy. Once I find the right partner, my life will feel complete. Once I achieve my goals, I'll finally feel satisfied. But Schopenhauer exposes the lie. There is no perfect life. The moment you reach your goal, new desires appear. You will always want more. You will always find new problems. You will always feel a quiet emptiness, no matter how much you achieve. So the first step to freedom is to stop chasing illusions. Happiness is not a destination, that it's a mirage, always on the horizon, but never within reach. Once you accept this, you stop being controlled by the chase. Step 2. Master the art of detachment. Most people suffer because they are too attached to life. They are attached to their desires. They are attached to their expectations. They are attached to an idea of how things should be. And every time reality doesn't match their expectations, they feel pain. Schopenhauer's answer: detach. Stop believing that life owes you happiness. Stop expecting the world to be fair. Stop clinging to the idea that things should be different. Once you detach from your expectations, nothing can truly hurt you. You stop fighting reality. You stop chasing what you can never have. And for the first time, you feel at peace. Because peace doesn't come from getting what you want, it comes from wanting less. Step 3. The only true freedom. The final step is the most powerful of all. Schopenhauer believed that the only way to truly escape suffering is to reject the will itself. In simple terms, stop feeding your desires. Instead of constantly seeking stimulation, embrace stillness. Instead of chasing pleasure, find satisfaction in the present. Instead of believing life must have meaning, be okay with the unknown. Most people live like addicts, enslaved by their cravings, constantly needing more. But when you reject the chase, you become untouchable. Nothing can control you. Nothing can make you suffer, because you have stopped playing the game. This is the highest form of power, freedom from the endless hunger that drives the world. But before we finish, there is still one final lesson, the deepest, darkest truth that Schopenhauer uncovered. Because even if you learn to escape suffering, there is still one last illusion that must be destroyed. Part 4, I will reveal the final truth, the one that most people will never be strong enough to accept. Are you ready? Part 4, the final illusion that must be destroyed. You've come this far. You now see the world the way Schopenhauer saw it, cold, indifferent, and ruled by an endless cycle of suffering. You understand that happiness is an illusion. You understand that desires control you. You understand that real freedom comes from detachment. But there's one last illusion, the most dangerous lie of all. It is the lie that keeps people clinging to false hope. The lie that makes people believe there is a way to escape suffering without paying the price. And the truth, there is no escape from suffering, not completely, not fully, not in the way you've been led to believe. Even if you detach from desire, even if you stop chasing illusions, the suffering of existence remains. Why? Because life itself is suffering, not just for you, not just for humans, for all living things. This is Schopenhauer's ultimate revelation. The moment you are born, you are thrown into a world of struggle, pain, and death, and the only way to completely escape it is to stop existing. This is why Schopenhauer called life a mistake. The brutal reality of existence. Think about it. Animals live in constant fear. They are either hunting or being hunted. Humans live in endless anxiety. No matter what they achieve, they still suffer. Everything in nature is fighting to survive. From the smallest insect to the most powerful king, all living things are slaves to suffering. And here's the ultimate tragedy. Life only exists because suffering exists. If we didn't desire, we wouldn't act. If we didn't suffer, we wouldn't struggle. If we didn't fight, we wouldn't survive. Pain is not accidental. It is the engine that drives life forward. This is why Schopenhauer believed that existence itself is a cruel joke, that a meaningless cycle of hunger, struggle, and brief moments of pleasure, just enough to keep you chasing more. But here's the darkest part. Even if you escape your own suffering, you are still surrounded by the suffering of others. This is what separates Schopenhauer from most other philosophers. He didn't just say, detach from desire and find peace. He saw the bigger picture, that suffering is everywhere, inescapable, and eternal. So what is the answer? How do you live knowing that suffering will never end? This is where Schopenhauer's final lesson changes everything. In Part 5, I will reveal the last step, the one that separates those who break from those who rise above it all. Most people will never be ready for this. But if you are, it will change your life forever. Are you ready for the final truth? Part 5, the final step, how to live knowing the truth now. You see reality the way Schopenhauer saw it. Life is suffering, desire is endless, happiness is an illusion, and even if you detach from your desires, even if you stop chasing false happiness, suffering still exists all around you. So here's the final question. How do you live knowing all of this? Most people, when confronted with this truth, fall into despair. They say, if life is suffering, what's the point? They say, if happiness is a lie, why keep going? But this is where they fail to see Schopenhauer's greatest lesson. Because once you accept suffering, you stop fearing it. Once you stop expecting happiness, you stop being disappointed. And once you stop playing the game, you become free in a way no one else is. This is the last step. This is how you live, even when you know the truth. Point 1. Stop resisting reality, and use it instead. Most people suffer because they refuse to accept how life really is. They want life to be fair. It isn't. They want happiness to last. It won't. They want meaning. There is none, except the one you create. But once you stop resisting, something incredible happens. You stop expecting the world to make sense. You stop getting frustrated when things don't go your way. You stop being controlled by emotions that no longer serve you. Instead of fighting the nature of existence, you learn to use it. You stop chasing illusions, you stop fearing pain. And most importantly, you start shaping your own mind. Point 2. The power of pity. How to see through the suffering. Schopenhauer had a shocking belief. The only way to truly escape suffering is through compassion, not love, not happiness, not blind optimism, but pity. Why? Because once you see that everyone is suffering, you stop feeling anger. The person who hurt you, they are suffering, just like you. The person who betrayed you, they are trapped in the same cycle of misery. The people chasing money, power, pleasure, they are running from a truth they will never escape. Once you realize this, you stop taking things personally. You stop holding grudges, you stop feeling hate, because you understand, everyone is struggling under the same curse. Instead of bitterness, you feel a quiet pity, not in a condescending way, but in a way that sets you free. Point 3. Live not for pleasure, but for understanding. If happiness is an illusion, then what is left? Understanding. Schopenhauer believed that intellectual clarity is the highest achievement of life. Not pleasure, not success, not meaningless distractions, but the ability to see the world exactly as it is, and remain calm within it. While others chase, you observe. While others suffer, you understand. While others fight the inevitable, you move with it instead of against it. This is the ultimate power, because once you reach this level, nothing can control you. No false hopes, no empty promises, no illusions of happiness. You don't need them anymore. You are finally free. The final thought, are you ready to see the world as it is? Most people will never accept Schopenhauer's philosophy that it's too dark, too real, too painful. But if you have made it this far, you are different. You are not afraid to see reality. You are not afraid to face suffering. And you are not afraid to live on your own terms. Because now you understand, suffering is not a mistake, it is life itself. The chase for happiness is the trap that keeps people in misery. True freedom comes from rejecting false desires and seeing life with absolute clarity. This is Schopenhauer's dark wisdom, and now that you know it, you can never go back. The only question left is, what will you do with this knowledge?